Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar hosted by CareAcademy and AidQuest. I see everybody's just joining the room here, so I'm going to give a few seconds. I see some folks trickling in. Perfect. All right, I think we can get started. Thank you everyone for joining. My name is Becky Harrington Davis and I am hosting this webinar. I am staying off camera so that my audio will work properly and look forward to sharing this information with you. This is our webinar recruitment and retention series, Solutions to Skyrocket, your recruiting and onboarding success. And I am joined here by experts from both CareAcademy and AidQuest, and we look forward to this discussion. A few housekeeping items here. Before we get started, this webinar is being recorded. We will send the recording out soon after the webinar to everyone who registered. And so you can feel free to share that with your friends and colleagues. And we will share the slide deck as well. And for our Q&A, there is the Q&A function. Please feel free to put any questions into the Q&A function, and we will be sure to get to those at the end of the discussion. And so to kick us off, some introductions. First, we have Ashwin. If you could introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashwin, and I'm Director of Marketing here at CareAcademy. I won't read out my full bio, but I've been working in marketing and revenue operations now for what feels like a decade. Prior to CareAcademy, I was working as a recruitment marketer for a company called Jobletics, which was in the food and beverage space, mostly working on this staffing solution application. Since then, I've been now at CareAcademy for about 3 years. And shortly after the recruitment marketing gig, I was working for a marketing agency where I worked on recruitment marketing for a rideshare company for a little bit. I'm excited to be in this panel today with our friends here at AidQuest, and looking forward to a great webinar.
And Ashwin, could you tell us a little bit about CareAcademy?
Yeah, absolutely. So CareAcademy's mission is to accelerate the world's transition to a caregiver-centric healthcare system. And we do that by elevating caregivers and enabling great health outcomes. What you're seeing right here on your screen is a picture of both our admin dashboard and our caregiver dashboard. What our care enablement platform offers is an accessible and engaging training content that is streamlined and is able to measure insights. We are transforming the way in which we train essential caregivers, and we've been doing that since 2016. A lot of you here might be customers of ours. A lot of you here might have heard of CareAcademy before. If you're using CareAcademy or have heard of CareAcademy, say hello in the chat. We want to keep this kind of interactive. Tell us what you are, tell us about your experiences and so on, but I'll move on to the next slide. So we've trained about 500,000 direct care workers in the US and Canada till today. We're a platform that's used to recruit, onboard, and upskill, retain, and measure outcomes. Most of your essential training for direct care workers for home care, home health agencies happens through CareAcademy. And we do that by making sure that we're a mobile-friendly platform in which individuals are able to get automated reminders. What we really are is training automation. It's very central to what CareAcademy is, to make sure that if you are an admin and you are someone who works and has a training program in place, how can we streamline some of the processes that you're already using with very high quality training? And the numbers kind of show that we've been able to do this over time, and we've been able to do this for hundreds of thousands of direct care workers. I'm going to pass it on to our friends at AidQuest because I think they're next to be introduced.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Cameron, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, this is Cameron Nasser. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm really excited about this webinar and working with our friends at CareAcademy. So I started a home care company actually in 2013. It was called Nueva Care. It was in the San Francisco Bay Area. So my experience in the home care industry goes back to that time. Before that, I had different types of businesses. I was involved in graphics and printing and publishing. So coming to home care was a very new experience for me. And the company actually grew pretty fast during the years that I managed it. And the agency was sold in 2019 to a larger national brand. And during those years, I learned a lot about how to grow an agency. And one of the ideas that we worked with and implemented was this concept of live chat, which we'll go over with you pretty soon. And the agency that I manage actually became one of the fastest growing private companies in the US. We were listed in the Inc. 500. And the agency was sold in 2019. So that's kind of like my experience in the home care industry. And again, I am very glad to be here today discussing these topics.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Oh. Okay, I think, can you guys hear me okay?
Sorry about that.
Oh, no, you're okay.
Yes, Greg, if you could introduce yourself. Thanks.
Absolutely. Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Greg McCarthy. Happy to be here as well, working with CareAcademy. As I was just sharing a story before we came live, I've worked with Helen in the group since the original days back when CareAcademy was starting. So it's really fun to kind of be back together. I originally started my journey in healthcare. I'm actually a physical therapist, worked at Kaiser Permanente, few other places, and decided, hey, I want to take some of what I do as a physical therapist and bring it to home care. So I started a company called TheraCare in the San Francisco Bay Area as well here. Along the way, also found that I was very interested in technology. I created a home care scheduling software. I figured, hey, I live in the Silicon Valley, why not? And then I realized, oh my God, what am I doing? And then joined the Honor Network along the way. It was a very interesting experience there. Was on their advisory council, and then eventually was acquired. TheraCare was acquired by the same company that acquired Cameron's. And Cameron and I we called each other frenemies here in the Bay Area. We were competitors, but always worked well together. And the idea of AidQuest came up with Cameron and thought it was a great idea. So we started working together on that. And here we are today. So happy to share with you what we're working on.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And, Cameron and Greg, could you tell us some more about AidQuest?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'll get started on that. And Greg, please just feel free to jump in and help me out here. So let me tell you why we started AidQuest and what is the idea behind it. So when I ran my agency, same as Greg, we spent a lot of money on generating awareness and generating traffic to our websites. So we did PPC campaigns, we did SEO, we had actually a full-time marketing rep who would go to like assisted living facilities and hospitals and skilled nursing facilities to just create awareness about our agency. And what happened is a lot of those people would eventually go to Google and search for our agency. So what we realized after spending all that money is that, yeah, all these people are going to our website, but we notice is that we have a huge bounce rate, like about 90% of that traffic that is going to our website is bouncing. We were really concerned about it because at some point, my agency, we were spending about $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month on just generating this awareness. And when I saw that 90% of that traffic was bouncing back within 20 seconds, I'm like, well, I'm really wasting 90% of my money. It's like, so what is going on here? So what we realize is that, yeah, people go to Google and Google shows them tens or sometimes even hundreds of your competitors. So when they go to your website, they click back. Really simple, because they have too many choices. And that's what we do. We do as like consumers, we do that. We are looking for an attorney, for a dentist or anything like that. You go to Google, basically you start your research and Google gives you a whole list of things and you keep clicking back and forth. So we really wanted to find a mechanism to engage our visitors when they come to our website, because we knew we had to do something for them to stay. And so we started experimenting with some chatbots, and then it really didn't work. So we went on to some AI solutions. They didn't really work either. So we decided, hey, let's just go old-fashioned. Let's just go to people, humans. Let's just have people start talking to other people. And once we did that, that completely changed the whole trajectory of my business, because we started getting leads on our own website for clients and for caregivers. So when we started this idea, this was in 2015, the main problem for our business was we needed clients. We have a lot of caregivers. Now, the world changed a few years ago. We had caregiver challenges towards 2018, 2019, but we didn't have a caregiver crisis. So one thing that we noticed was that as a side effect of our live chat solution, we are also getting caregivers who are going to our website and they wanted to engage. And we were getting, at that point, we were getting caregiver leads as well as client leads. So it really helped our business grow and take us to the next step. So as you can see on the screen here, our solution is really simple. It is a JavaScript code that is added to the website. It sits in the lower right-hand corner of all your pages. And then we are ready to help. We have people who get engaged with potential caregivers who are visiting you at all odd hours of the day. A lot of our caregivers conversations are coming in, let's say 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. It's really interesting when we look at that data that we're getting engaged with these caregivers. So today we have this platform that we have chat agents who are specifically trained to have home care agency conversations with potential caregivers as well as potential clients 24/7, 365. And we have these leads that are generated that are sent to you. These are exclusive leads. They come from your traffic. Therefore, you are the only agency who will be able to actually communicate with them. And that's why the recent data, which is coming out now, our company is about 1.5 years old. So we're just getting a lot of data recently coming in, and we're realizing that our customers are telling us that they're getting the highest ROI in terms of spend compared to caregiver recruiting and also client acquisition compared to all other platforms because of the quality of the leads, the intent of these conversations, and also the fact that these are exclusive leads. So it's really working out really well. And I can just talk about this for hours, but I think I should stop and see if anybody has any other comments. Greg, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, just to add on to that, Cameron, you mentioned there's a lot of spend that goes on SEO and PPC and everything coming in. And, I think one of our clients put it well, that it's kind of like having a very expensive store or restaurant and, having these people walk in and there's no one there to serve them. So I think it's really kind of a cool concept to, you have these people coming looking for information. So you want to engage them. You want to make sure their quality of experience is great when they actually end up on your site. And I think another thing to mention is that, working as we've had experience with different chatbots and things, puts a lot of work on the agency to handle a lot of the stuff coming in, where we're filtering all that for you and really just handling, and sending you things that are worth your time engaging in to help you convert clients and caregivers. So just wanted to add that.
That's great. Thank you so much. So today we are actually helping some of the largest brands in the home care industry with their recruiting efforts for finding caregivers, as well as, of course, clients. And one of our recent customers, who's now a friend, Richard from Visiting Angels, put it really well as he described his experience with AidQuest. And I just wanted to mention that really briefly. So these guys, they used to use the AI chatbot, which I have used many times, as late as yesterday. And it is really nice. It is very intelligent, but they break. As soon as you ask a question or say something they don't understand, the chatbot breaks. And that was his experience. So once they added AidQuest, they saw that, there's a lot of potential that they were missing from their own traffic. So within the first 30 days, Richard says that they got 30 leads just from their own traffic. It's a combination of caregivers and clients. So the key here is that all of you guys as agency owners, you have traffic going to your website, and that traffic is gold. There are caregivers and clients going to your website. Some of you have been around for a long time. Some of you are just starting your business, some spending on PPC, some SEO, but there is traffic. And once you start harnessing that traffic, you will realize that, oh, I actually have some caregivers who are just actually looking at my website, looking for work. And it's important to understand that and realize that there is some abundance and some really good traffic there that is already going to your website, and you need to take advantage of that to actually be able to find new caregivers and grow your business.
Well, thank you so much, Cameron and Greg. And I'm going to stop sharing now as we just get into our discussion. We are, of course, here to talk about recruiting and onboarding challenges and solutions. And so I would love to hear from the audience, the participants here. If you could share, what is your biggest challenge when it comes to hiring, recruiting, and onboarding? I'd love you to just put that in the chat so we can, see what folks are dealing with. And usually we have a lot of the same struggles. So as you put that in the chat, Ashwin, can you start us off by talking about the biggest staffing challenge in your view?
Yeah, so excited to kick this off. We've had a couple of conversations before this webinar, myself, Greg, Cameron as well. And I think everyone in the chat will agree that the biggest problem is that there's a shortage of caregivers in the market today. And there's just not enough. I think the data that we're seeing today is that we need about 5 million new caregivers in the next 5 to 10 years. And the question is, how are we going to get there? And in order to get there, it's not going to involve getting existing people from the market into your agencies, but how are we actually creating more talent and improving the ecosystem that already exists? Because if there's a surplus of 5 million caregivers, they're not going to show up overnight. It ends up being a strategic shift that most of us as leaders, as people who work in this industry, need to make that change for it to kind of realize. I know training because I work at CareAcademy, so I know the impact that things like training and upskilling can do for an industry, and it's not just for home care, for any industry. The minute you are putting together the right education pathways, the minute you're putting in the right barriers so that there's a laddering system involved, you're improving the ecosystem so that more people want to join it, right? So it's a little bit of both. I'm glad we're talking about recruitment and onboarding, because I think platforms like AidQuest have a big role to play in the recruitment funnel of getting people in the door, right? Someone comes to your website, and as Greg mentioned, if you walk into a restaurant and there's no one there to serve you, like, you need to have that hand holding. So then when you're going through your onboarding process, like, what does that training look like for someone who's never been a caregiver before, right? What does an onboarding process look like for someone who knows very little about the home care industry or is just trying to get into it? And it's about kind of meeting that 5 million surplus. We can all go to Indeed and we can all put job postings out for the existing caregiver population that's out there, but then we're just competing with each other. And at some point, as an ecosystem, we need to make a decision of, like, where is the real talent existing? And when we kind of open our eyes and be like, hey, we need to create that talent, that's kind of when our ecosystem evolves. So glad to get that conversation started, but I'll also kind of pass it on to Cameron and Greg to talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, thank you, Ashwin. And as you were talking, a few people are coming in the chat saying our biggest challenge is retention in the first 90 days. How can we find quality caregivers? A lot of caregivers leave within a few weeks or months. Getting people to commit to their shifts. I'm sure all of these are, problems that everyone here faces. And applicants not showing up for their interviews. I know that is a major problem. Cameron and Greg, what in your view, what are some of the biggest struggles that agencies are facing on this?
Who should go first? Greg,
Greg, why don't you go ahead?
Greg, you're mute.
There we go. Sorry, there was a siren going by, so I shut it off. Yeah, so I think, part of, I mean, going to the retention question, I'll just kind of talk about that for a second. From running our own agencies, I think building that relationship is super important with the caregivers. There's so many options for them out there to work for different places. So what we feel is starting right at the beginning, creating that relationship with a human, chatting with them. They're finding, I think, a lot of novelty and creating that relationship right from the get-go, and that's what I think is important to do, and that's where a live chat can come in. I think, bringing them in down the funnel that way is a great way to start. Also, showing up for interviews, things like that. We're pretty excited to be adding a ability to use Calendly and directly book a caregiver onto an interview or a client into an assessment. So I think those are things that will properly introduce someone into your agency from the get-go, and they'll feel that relationship starting, and that hand-holding, and that kind of excitement to come work for you. And I think another thing I just wanted to bring up, this question comes up, is with the crisis, again, talking about creating other ways to bring people in. Some people may be looking for work, maybe coming off Indeed, maybe doing different things. Everyone this day and age will go ahead and look at a website prior to making a phone call or do anything else. So it's a credibility check, right? We all look at that. If we're looking for a plumber or anyone, we go check out that group's site, look at the founders, look at whatever's going on. And so that's going to open the door for them to start chatting and getting engaged. So again, bringing them to the site, getting them engaged from that relationship early on, I think will help not only bring them to your agency as a client or a caregiver, but help them stay, because that relationship's been established early on. So just a few thoughts I wanted to bring there. Cameron, any thoughts? I might have rambled too much on there.
No, that's very helpful. And so we're talking a lot about bringing caregivers in the door, or answering the door once they're already there, really. And then Ashwin, once you have these caregivers in the door, what are some of the biggest challenges that happen with onboarding and retention?
Yeah, I think there was a couple of questions I saw in the chat of some people's biggest commitments are making sure that applicants show up, or that people kind of make their shifts, or making sure that people stay after the 90-day mark. So onboarding plays a really big part in that. Making sure that your caregivers will stay once you've kind of gotten them in the door. I think it's all about getting someone to that foot in the door, right? And then it's all down to what is the experience you provide after that. And it's similar in home care. We've seen this in home care, but it's similar for any industry. Take an example of like a company that has a great onboarding experience. I think of Amazon, right? Their onboarding experience, the reason why they're able to recruit millions of folks on a yearly basis is because they have not just automated that experience to be standardized, but they've unified that depending on the different roles that they have available. So that is an example of a company that's really put together the most solid onboarding experience, so that the minute you're at the job, you know exactly what you're doing. And that translates to retention, because they have one of the best retention rates as it relates to employers in the US today. And the reason they have that, I mean, ignore the firings and all this stuff that they're doing, like that's another thing. But their retention rates are some of the highest in this country. And the reason that is because when someone is going to a shift, they know exactly what they're supposed to do. And they have the confidence to know exactly what they're supposed to do. And once you create an onboarding system that has the right learnings, where someone is going into a job with confidence, your retention rates end up going up. And that is proof in the concept, because we're seeing large companies in home care and outside of home care that are able to do that and maintain solid retention rates because of that.
Ashwin, I also think, with CareAcademy, the training, something I was always impressed with was, providing a ladder for a caregiver to, we used to use training to help them. If they passed certain requirements, they could move to a different level of pay or responsibilities. And I think that also helps people, retain and stay in a space, as you mentioned, the excitement, the comfort of moving into a new job, a new client, but also being able to grow within in the company, and that comes with training and education. So I think that's super important.
Yeah, I love hearing that from you, Greg, and from you, Cameron, just because you guys have owned agencies. Y'all know this process. Y'all know the history behind what is needed. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And so I think we're talking about a few different challenges. One of the biggest challenges, as we've talked about, is caregivers dropping out of the process at some point, either from the very beginning, they come to your website and they leave without applying, or they drop off at some point during the application process, they don't show up for the interview, or maybe they do all that, but then they don't complete their training. And so they're not able to, be in compliance and get out into the field. So part of reducing that drop off, right, is reducing the friction that it takes for the caregiver to complete the entire process, right? So how are these solutions automating that process to reduce the friction and just make it easier for caregivers to make it all the way through? Can we talk about that? Maybe let's start again with AidQuest and what you're doing to make that process very, very easy for caregivers.
That's a great, I think, point you bring up. The key word, I've been thinking about this, friction. Friction is really the key word here. And going back to Ashman's numbers, let's look at the big picture here. We are an industry with 2 million caregivers, but we're going to need 3 million more over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years, something like that. So the only way we're going to get that is we have to realize we are competing with other industries. We are competing with people who want to work at Home Depot. We want to compete with all the people who want to work at restaurants. We're competing with really big industries who are really using technology to reduce friction for their employees, and home care industry needs to do that in order to attract caregivers, potential employees from other industries. And one of the biggest problems that we have, I think, in our industry, and from what I remember, is friction. Because if you look at the life cycle of a customer as in comparison to a life cycle of a caregiver, caregivers have their own approach and their own life cycle of when they enter the process of looking for a new job. And there are all these little touch points that every touch point that I remember I looked at, it was full of friction from the time they land on your website to the time they have to complete an application. And the most important part, the training process, it was so full of friction, so much challenges. Nothing was really automated. And I think one of the great things today is that, like, for example, with CareAcademy, that process could really be automated. And also the notifications that could be sent out to caregivers for showing up for interviews. All these little things that we are adding up to create less friction, I think it will really help not only with our existing pool of caregivers, but also attracting other potential employees from other industries to look at our industry, because we have a very unique industry. It's full of passion. People do this work because they love it. And if we can create less friction and make this easier for them, I think we will have an opportunity to bring in the additional 3 million people that we need to join our industry. So thank you for mentioning that word. Friction is the key word here. Let's make the process frictionless. And I think technology is going to be a big player in achieving that goal.
Yeah, and Cameron, just to add on to that, you mentioned, caregivers are looking for jobs. Someone passes away, different things change in their life. This is often the only time they have to look at things is at night, right? 2 a.m, something, they're on an overnight shift, whatever. They can do their CareAcademy training, but they can also be looking for their next job, going online, getting information about an agency, if their current agency doesn't have work for them, whatever it is. So it's nice for them to be able to have the ability to chat with someone, but also to train. So I think that's a reality in the world. And so if we can make their lives more convenient, it doesn't always function, especially home care is a 24/7 business. It doesn't work between 9 and 5. So we've got to reduce that friction by allowing that. And I think that's what we're trying to work together on here. So
Such a good point. Yeah, home care is a 24/7 business. I think that, is a really good reminder. And Ashwin, can you tell us a little more about reducing friction as in the onboarding and training process and how CareAcademy is helping with that?
Yeah, I think both Cameron and Greg alluded to a little bit of this, but home care is a 24/7 industry. And in order to reduce that friction, you need to be present to be able to service your staff whenever they need servicing. So that kind of comes down to both training as well. How can you make sure that if someone has a doubt before going into a shift, they have training that's accessible? Like, hey, I need a little bit of a refresher on what to do in this very specific case for this different specific type of dementia. Let me watch a 10-minute CareAcademy video and just get a little refresher. So by the time I'm entering a client's home tomorrow morning, I'm able to do that. And I might want to watch that video at 2 a.m., right? You might not have the in-person folks at 2 a.m. to be able to answer that call and provide that information. But kind of going back to that point, technology exists to reduce that friction and make sure that we can be a 24/7 industry. Platforms like AidQuest, if you're looking for a website at 2, 3 a.m., you should be able to receive the information you need. If you're about to enter a client's home at 8 a.m. and 5 minutes before going in, you're like, this video will really help me. You should be able to have that accessibility. So I think friction is met by accessibility. And the minute we kind of solve that accessibility problem, we're really reducing that friction.
Absolutely. And of course, caregivers are very busy and they might have multiple clients. They might have, be working at all hours, or they might have multiple jobs. And so, oftentimes these middle of the night, whether it's the going online to look for jobs or that's when their time is to do their training at these odd times, or maybe their client is, they have a client who's sleeping, or that's just when they're home and they have the time to work on these things, right? We don't want to lose that opportunity. So another question I have is the candidates who are coming in, when you have job candidates who are coming in, as an agency, looking for ways to automate this process of hiring, how do technologies help us to gauge what kind of candidate we have coming in the door? Cameron, do you want to take that?
Well, I think one of the things that we can contribute to at the very beginning, because we are probably at the very beginning of the funnel when a conversation starts. So what we can do and what we do now is really try to make sure that potential candidate has some specific requirements that meet the minimum requirements. Because one of the things about chat conversations is that you don't want them to be too long, because if it's too long, you pretty much lose the attention of the person who you're chatting with. So we go through a few what we call knockout questions. We want to make sure they can work in the area of the agency. We want to make sure they can legally work in the US. And there are some specific questions that we can put into the conversation for specific agencies. For example, if you require driving or a driver's license, then we can ask that question. So our goal is to just hand to you a candidate that could potentially work for you, and then the rest of it is really kind of becomes the agency's responsibility to follow up, set up an interview, and then assess the candidate with some assessment tools to see what kind of skills they have. So that's kind of like, we do our best at the beginning of the conversation to hand you something that we think is a potential candidate for you to work with.
And I think to add on to Cameron's, that one of the things here we try to really do is customize it for your agency, right? Because every agency is a little different. And so that's part of the beauty of having a live chat agent too. Not only do we try to teach them empathy and, from our experience in home care, and we do multiple trainings with our chat agents, but also to make sure they're really aware of your agency and are a true ambassador for your agency. I think that's super important to do.
I think that's a really great point that you both bring up about customization. And when you have this technology solution that is helping you to automate, you don't want it to just be robot. You don't want it to just be doing everything, in a cookie cutter fashion, right? You want it to work for your agency. And Ashwin, on CareAcademy side, can you tell us a little bit about how you can customize your training?
Yeah. So the one thing that you can do with CareAcademy that's kind of important is that when caregivers train with CareAcademy, their training certificates kind of move with them. So if they've completed a CareAcademy courses for the agencies in the past, you don't need to retrain them. And that's really important because kind of as this industry is going to keep growing, the skills and competencies that you have with you should travel with you. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, so that's a great way for agencies to see who's coming in. If they already have these CareAcademy trainings, then coming in with them, then they don't need to retrain them, which is super helpful. And also, when you're thinking about the training and when you're thinking about setting up your training as an agency, what are some of the different options that you have with CareAcademy for what you include as your curriculum?
Yeah, so I'll answer that question. That it totally is dependent on kind of the compliance. I think there's compliance and then there's beyond compliance. And that's where most agencies kind of lie within, which is the training that you need in order to be able to enter a client's home and meet the requirements of your state. But then how do you kind of go beyond that? And how do you go beyond that to ensure that if there's certain situations that you're kind of encountering during your job at a client's home, how are you able to kind of raise your hand and be like, hey, I could use a little bit more training on this? Or you encounter or you believe you're kind of going to encounter a situation because you've read your client's profile and you're like, this might come up at some point. Like, how can I get a little bit more training on this? How can I certify myself on a number of different skill sets or competencies? We have with CareAcademy about 11 specialized certifications that are based on different competency areas. And what those do is, if you want to be very competent in something like dementia care training, well, we have a package of a specialized certification so that before you can enter a client's home on dementia, you are not just competent in dementia, but you are also, well, we have an approval by the Alzheimer's Association. So we are, I believe the word is, I think it's approved by the Alzheimer's Association, and it is recognized. There's another word that I'm not supposed to use that is not recognized, but recognized is the word that we're supposed to use. And that recognition is enough to, and with that, you're able to not just have the right competencies, but you can then tell to a client before they enter home, like, hey, the caregiver that I'm sending to your place is recognized by the Alzheimer's Association. They've received the required training by a national association, and kind of how you can use that in order to kind of improve the skills that you have. So.
Thank you so much. A couple more questions here, and then I want to get to the audience questions, which I see are coming in. So thank you. So I was wondering if we could share some success stories that you've had from your customers when agencies are looking to automate and use technology to speed up and improve their recruiting and onboarding processes. What are some success stories that you have personally seen, in your experience? Ashwin?
Yeah, I think we've had, if you go to the CareAcademy website and you go to like our success stories, you'll find a bunch of customers that we worked with. One of them that is on there is with the Area Agency of Aging of Northwest Arkansas. And with them, I'm actually looking at it right now, but they kind of started stating in their job postings that when they were hiring people, that they used CareAcademy as part of their onboarding process, and that actually improved applications. Because when you included in that job posting, hey, this is the training that we provide, because we've trained over 500,000 caregivers in the US and Canada, a lot of the people who work in the non-medical industry or even in the home care industry, medical, recognize our name. And they're like, oh, I've recognized that training. That's training that I would need or require in order to continue. And that just saw an acceleration in applicants. So how can you use a training even as like a marketing tool to then drive more applicants towards you?
Absolutely. And Cameron, can you share a success story?
Oh, absolutely. I can. We have several actual testimonials from owners and CEOs of agencies that we're working with. They're all on our website, but I can tell you the probably the most important point of our success has been the fact that we are now serving about 400 agencies in about a year. We launched about a year ago, so that is a testament of how agencies are finding our solution. And when I talk to a lot of our customers, most of them are pleasantly surprised at the leads and the caregiver leads and client leads they're getting from us once our solutions installed on their website. And what they're wondering is, wow, they were missing all of this before. So again, this traffic, this golden traffic that is coming to your website, we harness that traffic, and many owners are just very surprised as to the amount of conversation that comes out of that traffic. And Greg mentioned one of the testimonials is that our customer says that the website is like having a storefront, and if you have nobody there, people come to your store and they leave. So when you have somebody there having conversations, it really makes a big difference.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, Cameron, a lot of people joined initially to look at the client, the increased number of clients they could recruit from there, and but pleasantly surprised at the number of caregivers that did come in, and the ability to allow the chat for a caregiver that they find it very nice to be able to chat on there. And I think one of the best little stories, we have lots of little stories of the surprises of like, wow, there was this many caregivers that came across or this many clients. But one of the best ones was, hey, in our first week, we not only got a client, but that client came with 2 caregivers, right? They just came across to us, and it was pretty cool. So it's just opened the door to a new way of bringing in people and engaging with them.
And I will just mention something I just saw on the Q&A, but it looks like Richard Ruda, who is an AidQuest customer, is in the chat. And he said, as Cameron mentioned, I've been with AidQuest since March 2023, and I've received 41 leads from both caregivers and clients. AidQuest has been a real game changer. So
Thanks, Richard.
Yeah. Thank you, Richard. I'm really glad you're able to join us. That's wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And yes, thank you, Richard, for that comment. So great to hear about all the successes. And so in addition to these specific technologies with CareAcademy and AidQuest, what are some other best practices that the audience here today can use to skyrocket their recruiting and onboarding processes? And I'm thinking about things like, how can they optimize their website, their job posting? What are some other actionable tips we can leave them? Cameron, do you want to start that?
Cameron, do you want to talk about some of the SEO, some of the things you were going to refer to there? Oh, you're on mute, Cameron. Can Cameron hear us?
Sorry about that.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I had a connection problem here. I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Oh, sorry about that. The question was, can you give some actionable tips to our attendees here about optimizing their SEO and website to get applicants in the door? Got
it. Exactly. So I think one of the most important things that a home agency can do to attract more caregivers to their website is actually start posting jobs, have a page that you post jobs to, and have this be dynamic, updated. When you have new openings, updated. Hey, I'm looking for a caregiver in this area. The next day or a few days later, put a new job posting. I'm looking for a new caregiver in this town. So I'm looking for caregivers with these types of skills. So make this page dynamic, and also write some blog posts about why caregivers should work for your agency. These are our benefits. It's really important because caregivers don't know your agency. They don't know what you offer. It's so interesting when I talk to some of the owners of these agencies, every one of them has something unique that they can offer their caregivers. And without you mentioning that, nobody's going to find out. So you really should talk about it. The fact that you probably provide certain maybe like a retirement benefit or some other perks, mention those, write about it, and also add caregiver testimonials. Those are so important because caregivers want to work somewhere where they think they're appreciated. So if you combine testimonials with blog posts and job postings on your own website, this is going to create a higher level of SEO ranking for you when a caregiver goes to Google and says, I'm looking for caregiver jobs in San Mateo. Guess what? Your agency will have a higher chance of coming up, and they may click on your agency when you have all this data and all this information on your website. These are some of the things that I've learned in the past year working with some of my wonderful clients using our chat, because the fact that they do this, they're attracting more caregivers, and the fact that we have the chat there, the conversations that are taking longer on the website, that creates a higher domain authority from Google's point of view, because Google sees, hey, more people are coming to your website and they're actually staying. They're not leaving after 20 seconds. For some reason, they're staying and talking to somebody. So all of that kind of like creates a positive feedback loop for your agency to attract more caregivers. So these are some of the thoughts that I have.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cameron. That's a lot of really helpful advice I think agencies can start working on right away. Ashwin, do you have any other best practices to add?
The one that I can think of, there's many, but I think the one that I've been thinking and resonating recently, because it's been very relevant to some of the work we're doing at CareAcademy, but how do you personalize your messaging? So if you are hiring someone from Indeed for a specific role in a specific area, like how do you personalize the message to that specific individual? And I think it's having a better understanding of who are your different caregivers. Not every caregiver is going to be the same. Every applicant is going to be different in its own regard. And if you're able to create personalization and really talk to the needs of that specific caregiver and downstream that, that's when I feel like agencies have real success. So for example, like one example that comes to mind is when I used to do recruitment marketing for this one company called Jobletics, which was not in the home care industry, but it was in the food industry. When we used to do Craigslist postings, which by the way, if you're not doing Craigslist postings, those things can skyrocket if you do them right, especially like the really nice HTML ones. But one thing that we used to do there is, depending on the board, our message was completely different, because we knew that we were speaking to a different audience. And you're going to have caregivers from all phases, coming from all parts at different kind of parts of the funnel. And based on that, if your messaging is different, if your personalization is different, you are down to as it relates to like your funnel percentages.
Thank you so much, Ashwin. We lost you for the last like half of your sentence, but I think we heard most of it about personalizing your job postings in different locations, because you're going to have a different audience and you really want to speak to the audience on that platform.
Yeah, my internet's being a little spotty, but I hope I'm back to normal now. But yeah,
you're good. We got most of it. Thank you so much. Okay, so last one of my questions before we get to the audience questions. My last question is thinking about for agencies who are out there thinking about new technologies and adopting new technologies, that can be cumbersome. That can be a difficult decision. So when considering any sort of technology change, what should agencies consider about the technology platforms beyond the price? Cameron, do you want to start us off there?
Of course, yeah. I can tell you my personal feedback, personal experience when I was running the agency that I had, and one of the biggest challenges I had when finding a new technology solution was that, hey, this looks like a great solution. Let's forget about price. This looks like a great solution, and you start implementing that solution, and you realize that, wow, it takes so much of my time, and that solution that looks really shiny and really interesting sometimes comes in and actually creates more problems for you. So it's so important, I think, to examine the solution, the technology you're bringing in, and really realizing that, okay, what are the things I have to do, my team has to do to implement it. And that is the real cost of the solution. And that is really what I experienced with. So I always look for solutions that are that don't have too much overhead, that are turnkey, that come in and actually help me and my staff save time and streamline things. And going back to your keyword, today's keyword of the webinar, which is friction, create less friction. So solutions, I think technology solutions have to create less friction and create efficiencies and streamline things, and not have you spend more time or your staff spend more time in implementing those solutions.
If I can just add to that, I think the key to the word solution means that you have to have a problem in order to have a solution. And it sounds mad obvious saying it, but like if you're solving a problem and the solution is able to do that for you, that's when you see a good fit, right? And technology can solve a lot of problems. I think platforms like AidQuest, like CareAcademy, solve a lot of big problems that agencies have today. But I think it always comes down to like, how do you prioritize your problems, right? You're going to have 100 problems as an agency owner. What is like your top problem today? And what is the thing that you can use to be able to solve that problem? Recruitment is a huge problem today for most agencies. If you're in this webinar today, like I'm pretty certain recruitment is a big problem for you right now. What is your solution to that? And sometimes it's not a single solution, sometimes it's multiple solutions. So it kind of comes down to like, what is my strategy in order to implement all these things in order to kind of better my agency and my company. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So let's get to some of the audience questions. We have a great question. I'm just going to put up this. I'm going to share again to show my slide for any questions. And please put your questions here into the Q&A as we're going through these. We'll try to get to as many as we can. And if we don't get to it, we will follow up with you. So one of the questions is, what advice do you have for places that are short-staffed and don't necessarily have the time to fully train new employees before they need them to deliver care? Ashwin, do you have thoughts on that?
I do, and Becky, can you repeat the question? My internet's being spotty again.
Oh, sorry. What advice do you have for places that are short-staffed and they don't necessarily have the time to train the new employees before they need them?
I think solutions, like I'll come back to CareAcademy because I think that's kind of the obvious solution for agencies that don't have the bandwidth to be able to do multiple trainings. You know, we have an ROI calculator that I know that our consulting team uses in order to see like, okay, like if I'm doing training in person and I have and I run these trainings 4 to 5 times a year, and I have an RN on staff who's managing those trainings, and like the number of work hours that you're putting in, even scheduling, making sure for those trainings is it's ginormous. So solutions like ours exist in order to kind of solve for that problem. So it comes down to like solutions to the problems, and this feels like a problem, and it feels like CareAcademy is a good solution. So whoever asked that question, you should talk to us maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, if I can jump in there too, Becky, we used to, you know, this life happens in a home care agency, right? And you're rushing, you got to fill something. You know, that was one of the beauties of having CareAcademy. I can queue something up, tell a caregiver, watch this, and then our, case manager is going to meet you at the house. It's good for you to have a little bit of knowledge on this moving into it, but then we're going to do some hands-on training with you on the spot and make sure you're good. And times you can't send a case manager over, the CareAcademy training is, so thorough that, that they'll at least feel confident going in, maybe have the other outgoing caregiver help do a little bit of a training. We would often make sure that was the case, because you want to make sure your caregiver definitely feels comfortable going into whatever scenario they are. Your clients will pick up on it if they don't. And so that was, those are some of the ways we kind of approach that from TheraCare's perspective.
Excellent, thank you. All right, another question we have here is, in your opinion, what are the most important things to communicate during onboarding? Anyone want to take that?
I can get started with that one. I think one of the clear things you want to do during onboarding is set the right expectations, making sure that if caregivers coming in, like here's a timeline of the things that need to happen before you kind of enter a client's home. This is what's going to happen the first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. What trainings are going to happen in the first 30, 60, 90 days? What is it going to look like kind of beyond that? I think setting up clear expectations during onboarding is essential. You've probably heard this in webinars before or have taught about this. So, and I think even before you kind of get into onboarding, setting those expectations even before onboarding happens. So even during that recruitment cycle, right? So if you have a job posting, kind of setting up like why wait till onboarding to do like a 30, 60, 90 days? That's something that can happen even in the recruitment cycle, right? If someone's on your website and might be chatting with you on chat, like the question's like, hey, what does my 60 to 90 days look like? How can you be transparent of what that looks like as well? Because again, when you're recruiting, people are looking at here and everywhere when it comes to where they could kind of land. So can you provide that transparency even before onboarding happens?
I love that. Communication and setting the expectations is so important. Cameron and Greg, do you have anything else to add to that about onboarding? What are the most important things to communicate?
I can just tell you that if you ask me what is the most important thing in hiring, maintaining, and having a solid relationship with caregivers so they don't leave you in 90 days, the most important thing is the onboarding process, because majority of caregivers start looking for something else when there are misunderstandings, when they're unhappy, they're not happy with their clients. So the onboarding and continual communication is so crucial. If you keep that door open and you create expectations that they understand, you understand, then I think you will see that your retention rate is going to really probably skyrocket. So that is really my personal experience and my feedback on the onboarding process.
Thank you so much. Another question we have here is, what is the best practice of hands-on training for a new PCA that has no prior experience?
So we at CareAcademy actually have a core curriculum that is used by agencies in order to train folks on how to become a caregiver. It starts with a class on what it means to become a caregiver to kind of set that right expectation, and then moves on to a bunch of classes for PCAs on kind of how to even get started on that path. So if you're looking for something for someone who has no prior experience, I think CareAcademy is a very good solution to be able to help you get started with that. On top of that, most agencies have their own onboarding materials and information on what it means to be a caregiver for their own organization. I think creating those assets that kind of differ, that kind of reflect on who your agency is as it relates to your own personal brand, is important to kind of have hand on hand with the trainings that you kind of have as part of a CareAcademy or whoever your training solution or partner is. Because when you have those kind of hand in hand, it's not just about the training of what it is to be a caregiver, but what is it to be a caregiver at my home care agency? And what does that mean as it relates to my brand story? And what does that mean as it relates to my company? Because that's how you differentiate yourself. That's how you set yourself aside from every other home care agency that's out there.
Thank you. So 2 more questions here in the Q&A. If anyone else has a last minute question, put it in, but we have 1 minute left here. Is AidQuest a part of the CareAcademy offering or an add-on? I can answer that. No, it is not. We don't currently have an integration with AidQuest at CareAcademy, but we are partnering here on this webinar to offer you some valuable information, because we see that this is, we are both some solutions to help you automate your recruiting and onboarding process. So we just thought we'd partner up today to share this with you.
Yeah, and who knows what might happen in the future.
Exactly. It's a great idea to explore that. Right.
And I think, Becky, we're going to put a link or we can give more, specific information. We can give a demo directly more on our product, and either we can put a link here or we'll see it in the email coming out. Is that correct?
Yes, both. Absolutely. So we're going to put some links here. If you'd like to check out either of our solutions at AidQuest and CareAcademy. We're putting them in the chat right now, and we will also send these out with the email this afternoon, where we'll send you this recording and we'll send you these links if you'd like to follow up with us. We'd be very glad to share more information. Here we are at the hour. So any last thoughts before we say goodbye?
I am personally excited to see this recording to watch how I talk, because I
Fantastic.
sometimes get so nervous in these, and I hope the audience knows that.
You're great.
I'm actually nervous to watch the recording because I don't like when I watch myself talk. So.
Hearing my own voice, I go like, whoa. Like.
But I do thank you for the opportunity, though. It was great to be part of this.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and it's a pleasure working with you at CareAcademy.
Thank you so much to y'all at AidQuest, and thank you to everyone who's still stayed with us till the very end.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all our panelists for joining, and it was wonderful to have you. And thanks for all our participants. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Everyone.